All right, welcome back. I believe this is episode 14. If you remember last week, we did some refactoring, and offline, I decided to do some more, got a little carried away, and did a lot more. I hope that that's okay. I didn't put it on video. But anyway, I'll show you what happened. As you can see, we have a lot more folders. And so a lot of the functionality was split up, especially our tests. They're split into groups of functionality. Each file has different tests based on that functionality. We've got core tests now. Also, we split out some data structures into separate files like parser air and lexer air. Let's start at the top here. So now we have a REPL class that handles all the REPL stuff, and our CLI is our main program. Core is now split up into its own files with all the core functions grouped by functionality. The evaluator, we broke out the environment and the evaluator air. The lexer, we broke out the air and the functionality based on, or files based on functionality. Token is also in its own file now. The parser, we already talked about that. Reader, these remained unchanged. And one substantial test change that we did was, let's see, I think that was in the evaluator, where we had a lot of, if you remembered, we added in some functionality where when you did a defen or you did syntax quoting, it would check to see if symbols were defined. Well, that was actually the wrong behavior, because Clojure doesn't actually check that until runtime. So now that is the case. We got rid of some duplicate code that was checking for undefined symbols, and now that only occurs at runtime, just like it does in Clojure. So those were those changes. Now, and if you want to see the details, check out the repo. So now what I want to do is moving towards namespaces, which I mentioned last week. First, we need Vars. Now, namespaces, Vars are stored in namespaces. So when you do a def, that creates a var that then refers to the expression or value of that symbol. Right now we're doing that directory. Clojure actually has a var in between those for various reasons, like you can redefine the var, you can do dynamic binding, which we're not going to do right now. Just for now, we just want to get vars in place, so then eventually we can add some namespace functionality. So to that end, in the Clojure app, I had some conversations with Claude Code about namespaces and implementing vars, and came up with this prompt, which I pasted over here into Claude. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to implement vars in Swish. So I will accept this prompt, and then we'll look at it while Claude is doing it. So it's going to make a plan, actually. So let's look at this prompt. Okay. Add var objects to Swish. A Clojure like Lisp implement Swift. The goal is to make def and turn a var rather than storing a raw value. Support both bound and unbound vars, which we were not doing before, and add a var foo special form, and add a quote pound or pound quote foo reader macro that expands to var foo. Do not implement dynamic binding. That is explicitly out of scope. So we've got the code that it needs to change. We're going to have a var class that will have a name and a namespace property, and then the actual value, which will be the expression. Also is whether it's bound or not. We're going to add a new AST instance of our ref. Let's see, a new error for evaluation that we have an unbound var. Here we're updating our defs to support just one argument for unbound vars and being able to redefine vars. Symbol lookup is now going to do a duplicate thing where it looks up the var and then gets the value from the var. Our token now is a var ref, which is that quote pound symbol. And parser.swift, just more validation of the def. Printer.swift is going to print a var, and it's going to update some tests. And one thing I did with refactoring is also updated some code factoring, so now it's adding in, reminding itself of these code changes that I wanted, or formatting changes. All right, here's the plan, which is pretty much just going to reiterate that. I'm just going to scan this, call out any differences. All right, that looks good. Let's auto accept these edits. As always, in the show notes, there's a link to the repo so you can check out the refactoring changes we made. And there's a link to buy me a coffee if you'd like to support this work. And please add any comments, like and subscribe to the videos, add comments for what you'd want to see me do in the future. Or if you'd want to change how I do things, let me know. Okay, we've updated the evaluator and XPR and var. We added that var that we talked about. No tests as of yet. Updated the printer. All right, we're running some tests. Or just the new tests, I should say. It's got to update some failing tests to handle the new def behavior. Well, one thing in the prompt is that for now it's going to add all the vars will have a namespace of user, which, if you don't know, is the default namespace of Clojure. So for right now, we'll have kind of an implied namespace called user. All right, it looks like everything's passed. Let's go run the test ourselves. And let's go run things. So if I say def x2, all right, it prints exactly what Clojure does. X is 2. All right, now if we say def y, this should be an unbound symbol, which is what we get. Let's say we can say var x. We can say pound quote x. That looks good. Let's see, what else should we do? I think that's pretty much the new behavior. Let's look at the code. Evaluator error, we added the new unbound var error. In the evaluator, var refs evaluate to themselves. When we're evaluating a symbol and it's a var ref, we get the value of the var. If it's the special form var, then we get the symbol of the var, or the name of the var. When we're evaluating a def, we now allow just one argument, and so unbound vars, or defs, I should say. That's it. The lexer now looks for the pound quote token, which is defined here, the var ref. The parser now handles parsing of var ref. There you see, just allowing 1 or 2 arguments on the def. On the EXPR, we now have a var ref, and we added support in the quotable. The printer now knows how to print var refs, or vars. And here's our var class, which you see has a name, a namespace, and a value, and whether or not it's found. Let's see. We got evaluator tests. We added some tests in the literal tests. And we added tests for special forms. Updated that test. In our parser tests, we've got added a test for a single argument def. And in our var tests, all of these are new. Just tests for evaluating Vars. All right. I mean, to me, that looks good. That is a good first step to Vars. That was a short one. Next, we will probably do our first step with namespaces, and probably this will be a multi-step process where we add some functions dealing with the namespaces and the data structures, of course, and then eventually we'll add the ns macro that you typically see at the top of every Clojure file. See you next time. Thanks for watching.